Assalamualaikum, hai semuanya. Kita berjumpa lagi di video reaction saya kali ini guys, oke? Semoga semua yang menonton video saya pada hari ini sehat-sehat selalu. Nah, kali ini saya mau tengok video tentang ini ya. Kenapa semua ingin berteman dengan Indonesia? So, jangan lama-lama lagi, mari sama tengok video ini. Let's go.
China, India, the United States, the three most populous countries, easy to name, hard to ignore. But the fourth, that one tends to slip under the radar. Indonesia, a subtle but powerful player. No nukes, no invasions, no attention-grabbing headlines. Just 280 million people minding their business and quietly becoming one of the most courted countries on earth. Every big player is flirting to become besties with Indonesia. The US sees a quiet ally in a noisy region, a counterweight to China without the drama. China sees nickel, trade routes, and a polite maybe. The EU, resources for sustainable technologies. Australia, its closest big neighbor, and quietly hopes it stays chill. Even Saudi Arabia has started dropping by, briefcase in hand. Indonesia hardly knocks on anyone's door, but somehow the world keeps showing up at its doorstep. And it's not hard to see why. Indonesia's geography positions the island nation one of the most strategic locations on the whole planet. And it's probably for good. Indonesia is like a buffer zone to slow down all the madness in the world. Let me explain. A chain of over 17,000 islands stretching over 5,000 kilometers wide and covering more than 8 million square kilometers. Indonesia controls some of the busiest shipping lanes in the world: Strait of Malacca, Sunda Strait, and Lombok Strait, essentially gatekeeping any trade that wants to pass from the Indian Ocean to China and East Asia. Up to 40% of all global trade passes through Indonesian waters. The Strait of Malacca is even more crucial for China, as 80% of its oil imports squeeze through the narrow gap. The current world order goes through Indonesia. So for everyone, Jakarta's docility is more valuable than 1,000 treaties, because if Indonesia ever decided to make things complicated, a lot of boats would be very, very late. And here's where it gets interesting. Indonesia doesn't pick sides, no alliances, no declarations of eternal loyalty. It doesn't throw tantrums in front of the global community. Just a calm shrug and a polite, "We'll see." It just smiles and nods and gives everyone just enough to stay hopeful. This is what diplomats call strategic ambiguity. To the US, Indonesia says, "We believe in a free and open Indo-Pacific." To China, "We welcome economic cooperation." To everyone else, "Let's talk about minerals and palm oil." It's kind of a foreign policy judo, using everyone's enthusiasm against them, while Indonesia stays cool in the middle, sipping kopi. But Indonesia's popularity isn't solely due to its geography. Its economic rise is also a massive part of the reason why everyone's interested. On the global stage, Indonesia isn't just a big island, it's a massive economic powerhouse. It's got one of the largest economies in Southeast Asia and is quickly closing in on the top 15 economies worldwide. By 2050, it's predicted to become one of the top 5 economies on the planet. That's not a small deal. So why the sudden rise? First up, resources. Indonesia is basically sitting on a treasure chest that the world is scrambling to unlock. It pumps out half of the planet's nickel, the metal magic that makes electric vehicles zoom. Add in palm oil, rubber, and coal, and it's like Mother Nature rigged the resource lottery in Indonesia's favor. And here's the kicker. Indonesia is starting to move beyond just exporting raw goods. It's getting into processing, manufacturing, and even high-tech industry. Take electric vehicle batteries. Indonesia has the nickel, but now it's making the world come to it. Rather than simply selling raw materials and letting other countries build their factories elsewhere, from 2020 onwards, Indonesia decided, "If you want our nickel, you'll build your EV factories here." A strategy that said, "We're not your mine, we're your manufacturing partner." Tesla, Ford, and Hyundai all fell in line. Now they're investing billions in Indonesia, not just to process the materials, but to manufacture the end products. Indonesia made everyone play nice. Chinese firms work next to American suppliers inside industrial parks built with South Korean money, governed by Jakarta's terms. Indonesia's government has made it clear, if you want to access the country's mineral wealth, you have to commit to building facilities within its borders. This policy is part of the country's effort to move up the value chain and avoid simply being the world's mining pit. Instead, Indonesia wants to be the heart of the green economy, producing technologies of tomorrow, not just raw materials for it. And Indonesia is doing this all without military threats or economic coercion. It's simply saying, "We've got what you want, we're going to make sure it's used to build something bigger than just a factory in your backyard." This is economic diplomacy in full swing. Indonesia's making moves in silence, letting its influence do the talking. And then the next dimension, relationship with China. China is not just knocking on their door, but it's already halfway through it with its shoe off. Indonesia is a key link in China's Belt and Road Initiative, that trillion-dollar plan to redraw global trade routes with Chinese steel, debt, and diplomacy. Major projects like the Jakarta-Bandung high-speed rail, Southeast Asia Indonesia's first bullet train, are built with Chinese money and engineering. It's the BRI's showcase child, sleek, fast, and chronically over budget. But here's the thing, Indonesia takes the money, not the leash. Jakarta demanded that Chinese firms partner with local companies, hire Indonesians, and respect their domestic oversight. It wasn't just built here, it was built here, but we're the boss. Indonesia plays the game well, accepting Chinese investment, expanding trade, and even letting Huawei into its 5G rollout, but never fully stepping into Beijing's embrace. A quiet, stubborn independence runs through it all. And that's the trick. Indonesia manages to be crucial to China without ever being claimed by it. And it's not just about infrastructure. Indonesia draws firm lines, no Chinese military bases, a hard no to illegal fishing, all the while hosting military drills with the US Navy. Jakarta's objective is to bolster authority with grounded confidence. China wants allegiance. Indonesia offers a handshake with gloves on. This avoidance of dependence on others applies to finances too. While some countries have stumbled into debt traps, Indonesia has kept its books relatively clean. Its debt to GDP ratio is under 40%, far lower than many peers, giving it more freedom to walk away if a deal smells rancid. And there's more. Indonesia isn't just interesting because where it is and what it possesses. It's interesting because what it is. As somewhat of a rarity in the global south, a functional democracy with relative stability. No coups, no crackdowns, no leaders for life. Just a noisy and most certainly imperfect but adequately functioning political machine. Emphasis on adequate functioning. That's not attractive for headlines, but it's very appealing to anyone investing billions. And that money, there's room for it to grow. Indonesia has a massive youthful middle class with tens of millions joining the consumer economy every year. By 2045, it's projected to be the world's fourth largest economy, and the consumer market is in the core of this development. Household consumption is estimated to make up 54% of the country's economic activity. Thus, it's not a surprise why everyone from Uniqlo to Apple to Samsung wants in before the crowd fully arrives. And it's not just about markets, it's about meaning. Indonesia is quietly becoming a diplomatic voice of the global south. It's not a loud revolutionary like Cuba or a hard-aligned state like Iran. It's the quiet moderator, speaking at climate summits and trade forums with an aura of reasonable adulthood. So, it makes sense why everyone wants to be friends with Indonesia, because Indonesia isn't trying to be anyone's exclusive companion. It has a population of a superpower, the diplomacy of a non-aligned monk, and the resources of a country you don't want to argue with. It does not threaten, it does not posture. It just shows up to every geopolitical party with a plate of nickel and a non-committal shrug, and somehow leaves with everyone's phone number. In a world where everyone's shouting for attention, Indonesia whispers. And that's why everyone's listening.
Oke. Oke guys, itulah dia videonya ini. Jadi itulah dia, memang potensinya Indonesia itu semakin lama memang semakin terbentang luas gitu kan, dengan banyaknya kelebihan sebenarnya gitu kan. Bahkan juga populasi masyarakatnya saja pun sudah menjadi satu kekuatan besar untuk Indonesia gitu, dan ada banyak lagi lah gitu kan kelebihan-kelebihan yang menjadikan potensi Indonesia ini menjadi negara superpower. Sangat besar ya potensinya ini, oke? So, terima kasih banyak sebab kamu sudah menonton video ini. Jangan lupa untuk subscribe, like, komen, dan juga share ya. Kita bertemu lagi di video reaction saya yang seterusnya. Assalamualaikum.